Hey everybody, this is Mike, and today is August 1st, 2020, and, it's been a while. I'm back. I'm excited to share some good stuff. I got a lot I want to talk about, so much has been changing since, in the past month, but I want to begin with an update, and so I think what this video is going to be is like bringing up to speed, and then the second I want to do another video relatively soon, and that's going to be getting into like where I think the real juicy stuff is. I mean, not to say that this stuff isn't juicy, but so these two are going to be linked, and so this is going to be about like synchronicity, golden threads, and really what I'm sensing as the unveiling of the true internet. But that's what I'm going to work up to, because I can't just lead with that. All right, so May 1st, how different does the world feel since then? But May 1st, I moved into a church. And I spent 60 days there, and, that was really, really significant because of the timing in my own life, the timing of everything which is happening, and then the symbology of everything involved with, like, being in a vacant church and so forth and stuff like that. So I moved out at the end of June, on June 1st. And so let's go from there to this date. So that began with me leaving on a trip to Tennessee. I'm in Pennsylvania, and so what we're going to do right now is kind of get an idea. I'm going to show you some stories as demonstrations of really how the synchronicities and the golden threads, which are going to be our maps, if you will, through what's going on in the world right now. Because part of like this travel was like a reality check. Let me see what different parts of the world are like, what's going on, how is life there, and then and then also, how my own sort of journey ties into it, and this is true for all of this. So I share this, one, because I like to tell stories, but two, to encourage you to begin to understand your life from this sort of perspective as well, and to begin to look for the very, very tangible golden threads, which are going to be indications of like how you move through the mask wearers and what's going on in that world right now. So, okay, so right after moving out of the church, me and Jenny and the two girls head down. We were heading down to Chattanooga. This is Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we're up further up from here in Pennsylvania. And, just the logistics of the trip, we're like, we're going to break it up for, we didn't want to do that. It was 13-hour car trip. We're like, let's break this up. We had two young ones with us, and it's fun. Let's get out of the house. We're doing this road trip sort of thing. And, we found a place to stay in Greenville, Tennessee. And the selection of Greenville, Tennessee was a variety of factors. It was like, kind of like a little bit more like around the general area we wanted to stop overnight. It was convenient to get to because we're taking 81 all the way down. This is like Virginia. This is West Virginia. This is Tennessee. This is, maybe that's Kentucky. I don't know. I know maybe that's still Tennessee. Whatever. And here's North Carolina. So it's that part of the world. And we were going to stop here, and we found a place which we liked. And so this is the place which we found. We found the farm at Spring Creek in Greenville, Tennessee. This is the cabin, and the place was, it was fantastic. It looked interesting. The price was right. It was convenient. So that's where we went and we stayed. That was the logic behind why we chose to stay there. And so as it turns out, this Greenville, Tennessee, which has a population of 15,000. To give you some sort of idea of the size of it, it's like a town. It's good size. 15,000 people live there, but it's not like, a metropolis. But it's the home of the 17th president, Andrew Johnson. Or he lived there for a bit. It was where he began his political career. And so, there are only, 45 U.S. presidents, and so there's only so many places that towns that are associated with presidents. And so here's a small one, and we happen to bump into it. And not only that, I'd never heard of Andrew Johnson before. He was, the 17th president was the president following the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. He was Lincoln's vice president. So Lincoln was killed, and then Johnson steps in, which is very interesting because, you've got the whole sort of, when Kennedy was killed, and then Johnson, his vice president, steps in, and, there's all sorts of interesting things we could go there, but if you know those stories, you could take that down your own way. But what I really wanted to focus upon was, we were coming from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And Lancaster is home of James Buchanan. And Buchanan was the 15th president, right? And so what we did was we went from the 15th president to the 17th president and completely bypassed the Civil War. And if you go back in time, if you remember back July 1st, that was really when the stokings of the Civil War were happening, or at least in the reality which I was living in, that was when all of the protests, when all of this stuff was going on. And so on a certain level of experiential reality, you're watching, you're talking to me right now since this is already transpassed, but, for all I know, Civil War was bypassed. In my reality, and this sort of type of talk of time travel, in a very kind of tangible, but what are we talking about sort of way, we're going to go back to that. We don't quite understand what anything is, but if we are going to be honest with ourselves, we don't understand anything. The only thing you can say for certain is that you are in your body right now, and you are in this thing called Earth, and you don't know what Earth is, but you can recognize what that darkness, which we call sky, is, and those dots are, and we have some semblance of points of reference, but everything else we can't really say for certainty. I'm not saying that the stories that we've been told are not accurate, but I'm saying maybe they're not. And so we have to be willing, particularly in this time frame when everything is changing, to begin to look at things as they are and realize where we have lenses of interpretation. So all I'm saying is, from our history, I went through the Civil War, okay? And we did that. We did this in this joyful sort of way, which is what travel does. Travel is such a human experience. There are times we're travelers and there are times where we're homesteaders, but we travel and we go on experiences. So I'm traveling down this very, very beautiful path through this part of North America, which is, through popular culture has been tied to with being very backwoods thinking, very kind of backwards. It's got this bad reputation, but I'm going to say from my experience, going from where I was coming from in Pennsylvania, and as soon as I got to this area right here, this corner of, where is Bristol, wherever Bristol, Virginia is, crossing over, there it is, from Virginia into Tennessee, it's things got a whole lot easier. Things got a whole lot more open. And it wasn't until I started getting into what we would think of as more of these progressive towns that were in this part of the world that I began to seeing the stuff being shut down. But anyway, we took Greenville down to Chattanooga. Chattanooga was a spectacular place, and I'd like to do some research upon it. I learned a little bit about the Tennessee River. I learned a little bit about the mound sites, which are indicators of the significance of this area. But But that is not where I want to go to right now. That's not the point. The point is the next part of our journey from after Chattanooga, we went to Asheville. We visited some friends. And the point of all of this travel to Chattanooga and to the Asheville area it was a reconnection with family. So look at that symbolically. So we went down here, and interestingly enough, my own sister goes, we did this on Jenny's family. My sister, who lives in Florida, and unbeknownst to me, she then made a trip to Chattanooga a couple weeks after we had returned. So we're beginning to see these threads, and I encourage you to look for these threads in your life as well. But nonetheless, we then went to Asheville, and this is where the next part of our synchronicity begins to show itself. So we go to Asheville, and Asheville is a place where that's another area where I'm going to do some research, particularly because of the French Broad. If you've been following my work, the French Broad is the name of the river, the one of the what I would call the three sisters, the Susquehanna, the New, and the French Broad, as they all are ancient and came about around the same time. The French Broad also has a connotation to the Susquehanna or the Seine River, as the French Broad is a French woman, and if you've been following along, you understand the significance of these connections. But nonetheless, and this is Vanderbilt headquarters. The DuPonts are connected to this area, so we see all of the signs. But nonetheless, Asheville is a shutdown city, in my opinion, in terms of how that general population is responding to the stories which are being pushed out upon them. So nonetheless, this is where the story gets good. All right. So we head to Asheville, and we went, saw someone we know, and then we went to go see some family. And the actual place for family was right around here. It was in the South Carolina border. We had to drive down about an hour from Asheville down here. And we went to a town which was called Inman, I think, or Inman. And we saw some family, and then we returned home. And this was a really, really kind of personal, intense time. Just in terms of travel, is always if you're going to be in the car for 13 hours, and there's all sorts of stuff which was going on. And there was particularly in early July, there was a lot of pressure in terms of the Civil War and there were concerns and thoughts of there actually being some degrees of maybe roadblocks between states because of potential quarantines if one traveled out of state. So that was kind of in the air. And then I was coming off of 60 days of being in a church and all this sort of stuff. So this provided a great opportunity for self-reflection. And on this trip back, I was thinking, I'm what is going to unfold? What am I seeing is going to unfold? And I'm just kind of open with this discussion in my own head. And I was thinking about, because I'm coming from right this area, I was thinking about Freeman Fly, right? If you're watching this, you're probably quite familiar with Freeman and his influence in terms of breaking out, really kind of mainstreaming, bringing it to a mainstream or somewhat mainstream population of, kind of breaking out of the dream. He was instrumental, in the late 90s and the first decade of the 2000s. And so I've been a long time follower of Freeman, and, I've been on a show once, and that was a real treat for me. And I knew he lived in Greenville, and I knew I was right by there. And I was thinking about Freeman. And I was thinking about where the world is going to go. And what is a model? Because that's kind of how we work. We do need models. You don't need a model, but we use a model, an idea in our head. This is the power of predictive programming. That's why it's used to guide you. This is why capture the imagination is so important, is because when ideas are placed upon the mind, it's like the natural unflowing of life wants to go somewhere. It's going to go around like kind of what, particularly if you're unconscious of what seems commonplace. And so, to me, understanding that level of like human experience and consciousness, I'm like, what's a model which we need? Like, what makes sense for how we know what reality will be? And I started thinking of a model which was placed by Freeman, which was first introduced to me like 5-10 years ago, and he used to call it the friendship agenda. And the friendship agenda was really about traveling, and we're all friends, and homesteaders, and creating this kind of secondary culture where the currency was friendship, which was, the most human thing you can imagine. And what I was thinking about when I was driving home was, I was thinking about how that idea, which sounded like almost like just like quaint or fantasy-like, this hippie fantasy of how life could be, to it sounding like, that's a real, tangible way which life may have to unfold. There's a demarcation in the sand. You know it by those who want to wear it and those who know not to. That's a pretty clear indication. And for those who do not want to wear it, at some point they're going to be like, I can't be part of this system. Like, at some point the line is going to be drawn, most likely, that like if you want to be part of the system, either you're going to have your immunity ID and everything that comes along with it, or, for me personally, like, I like people too much. I want to see your face. I don't want to interact with that mask. And so it's like, I used to love being out in public, and now it's like, I don't have that I don't have the stomach for it. And that's just me personally, because I know other people are like, now is the time you need to go out in public because we need that human connection. And like, that's part of we're all walking our own, our own path. But nonetheless, I know where I am, and I know that there's got to be another way which is going to start to unfold, and that's why this friendship agenda was making so much sense. And I'm thinking about Freeman, and that's what all this is built up for, my friends, because this is like July 7th or 8th. It was Wednesday, July the 8th, when I am driving back. I'm driving back at 81, and I'm thinking about all this, and then lo and behold, let's go see this. Look right here. This is what we're talking about. Here's Asheville. We went down from 27. We went to this Inman in South Carolina. And this is Greenville. And Greenville is where Freeman lives. And it's 17 miles away. And that's why I'm thinking about him. I'm physically and mentally, I'm in that space. And then the next day, you see this right here, July 9th, 2020. It's an email from the producer of Freeman's show. I don't really know this guy. I've traded some emails before, and because he set up the last show, and he's introduced me to some other folks. But it's not like this is like a good friend of mine. This is not a common communication link. And I get this email from Steve. And it says, hey, Freeman's guest fell through. Would you be able to fill in? We've never had this relationship before, but this pops up on July 9th upon me returning after all of this and being in Freeman's mind. And so the reason why I'm sharing all of this, the reason why I'm sharing this going from one world to the other, is because it's getting weird, my friends, but it doesn't feel weird because we're living it. but I'm pointing this out for me because it's in my opinion, it's dramatic in the fact that I can show out the details. I can point out the details very, very clearly. And now I'm going to go on one level deeper. All right. So I went on that Freeman show. I think we had a really nice conversation. If I recommend listening to it if you like this sort of stuff. So now we go into what life transpired to upon returning home. So, also while I was gone, like I got a good friend in Lancaster. Ben of the Gypsies, that's what his name is. And he's a master gardener amongst other things, like someone who I feel very, very lucky to call a friend. One of those people, like, when you got like people like that in your life. And so Ben, one of the things which he does, he's really well known for, is Lancaster City, and this is a picture of a house in Lancaster City. It's got a lot of these, like, in the city, in the immediate area, like these, like, really grand buildings and estates from another time, if you will. And Ben is known within these circles of being a caretaker of these beautiful gardens. And from that, like, he gets involved with, like, things that spill out from that. And so the owner of this house on Lancaster City, it recently changed hands, and Ben was responsible for really overseeing the cleaning out of this house. This house was built in the 1860s, and it had been in the same family since that time period. And so because it always just kind of stayed within the family from different generations, it filled up with a lot of stuff. In the last couple generations, it's really fallen into ill repair, and Ben was kind of overseeing the cleaning out of this, and that involved bringing in a lot of auctioneers and people who would see value and work with kind of old stuff. And it was also a lot of cleaning out. And Ben was he reached out and he's like, hey, I saw that you did this thing in the church. I was following along. He's like, can you help me out? I got a week's worth of work here, cleaning this thing out. You might find it interesting. And I'm like, all right, one, I was excited to work with my friend Ben, but two, I'm totally surrendered down into following this golden path. And I know when something like this shows itself in my life, it's got to be something great, right? So I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I know it's significant. And so this is the house right here. And I'll cut to the chase. We're already 20 minutes into this talk, but it was a build-up. It was on the last day, the first day there, it was this interesting, creepy, wild house in disrepair, but beautiful at the same time. And I knew I was linked to it, but I couldn't quite figure out why. And I knew that a doctor lived in the house because there's all this stuff it was clear that it was a doctor's office, probably from very active in the 1950s, was run out of this house. And you could see who the people were who lived in the house. But it wasn't until the third day, my final day working there, that I figured out who and what this house is and how this connects to me in this very, very incredibly tangible way. So let me first back up into this. So right here, if you're familiar with particularly this video, this work, the Mystic Lancaster series, particularly Mystic Lancaster Part 3, the Rose Line, the Timeline, and the Line of Prophecy. And it came out, 2 years ago, late July 2018. Look, only 1,000 views. It's probably, me at least 25 of those times. But this is telling the story of these three roads. This road right here, 4, 62 Columbia Avenue, this is the timeline. Route 23 right here, this is the Rose Line. And this Manor Street, which is also 999, this is the line of prophecy. And this is like come true. So let me first point out, that house which we see right here, we see it is 230 West Orange Street, West, and we find that right here. Where are we? This is West Orange Street. This is like 2 blocks off of West Orange Street. It's like right here. This is it, right where this blinker is. And this road, it goes into this road and this road. This is an intersection. This is right in the epicenter of all of this. Watch this video. Watch all of the videos, really, to understand the significance. But this is like right in the heart of it all. All right. So, let me also give a little point of context. So this is the epicenter. This is the energetic epicenter. This is where these 3 roads, 23, 462, and 999, they all empty into the Susquehanna River, the oldest river. This is 40th parallel right here. I'm living right now in Millersville. I was living in Marietta. This is where Chickies Rock is. If you've like seen any of like the rights of the parallel, sort of 40th parallel, this is where that takes place, right here. This is Chickies Rock. This is High Point right here. And this is Turkey Point right here. Right where 999 hits 441. This is where the 40th parallel is. This is where the Susquehannocks lived. This is where everything is. This is where the map is. So this is the epicenter of it all. And so we see this house. All right. And so I find out. All right. So I realize at the end of the day who this person is. I know it's a doctor. His name was Dr. Hal Williams. Dr. Hal Williams. I could see it in all of the stuff which I was like throwing out. There was an enormous book collection, thousands and thousands of books, dating back to the late 1900s, like original books within this family. And many of the books I could see belonged to the doctor who practiced there, and his name was Hal Williams. And eventually I realized who Hal Williams was. So let me go and tell you who I know who Hal Williams was. Dr. Williams right here. I'll read this. This is about the Susquehanna Waldorf School. And if you're familiar with a lot, I talk about my boys a lot. You know, it's a big part of what and who I am. And this is from last year, spring 2019. These are my children. They are in the Susquehanna Waldorf School. We see this right here. It's called Williams Hall. Is this where this picture was taken? These are my sons. And so where is this located? Where is Susquehanna Waldorf School located? Right here, this is Route 23. This is the Rose Line. It goes right into the Marietta. This is where it's located. Marietta 23 turns into Market Street. And this is Market Street right here. You can see it. I literally used to live right here. This was the building I lived in, and this is the Waldorf School. I lived here because I was across the street with my sons. This is where the Rose Line ends. This is the Waldorf School. And this house, Dr. Williams, it is he and his wife who gave the initiative and loving support and guidance for the founding of this school, the Susquehanna Waldorf School. The Susquehanna Waldorf School began in 1987 by a group of parents. They met in Lancaster, Friends Meeting House. They eventually moved to this building right here, and they were under the guidance of Dr. Williams and his wife, Dorothea Williams, who was a Waldorf teacher who taught the first class. So the first point I want to bring to this is, you know, I'm not endorsing Waldorf education. Obviously, like I send my children there. I'm just saying that this is I have an immensely strong personal connection with the Susquehanna Waldorf School, and I'm finding myself in the house of the man who he and his wife, who were the inspirations behind it. And the reason why they are the support and guidance. So I'm going to give a little bit of information about Waldorf education. So Waldorf education is based upon the teachings of Rudolf Steiner. I know a lot about like Steiner's path, like, you know, how his philosophies, how it ties in with theosophy, stuff like that. But me personally, I don't like to go deep into like the philosophical sort of things. I like to back off from that, and there was a time I did, but now I kind of am a little bit more hands-off. I'm not like an expert in Steiner, but I know that this is a school which is based upon Steiner philosophy. But what Dr. Williams is he was a big follower of Steiner's beliefs. And I know a lot of people who are. And so it is from that philosophy which Waldorf education is based upon. So let's go, you know, this is probably the most I've looked at Steiner's teachings, pulling these slides together. So let's go look at this. So Waldorf education, also known as Steiner education, is based upon the educational philosophy of Rudolf Steiner, the founder of I can never say this because I always talk about this in Waldorf schools, anthroposophy. And so Steiner was once like a firm, like leader within like the H.P. Blavatsky theosophical movement. I think he's one generation later, like the Annie Besant era. And then like there was some like disagreements in terms of like philosophies, but they have like very, very strong foundational truths. And then he went and he founded this anthroposophy. And so let's go read what this is about, like from a Wikipedia explanation. So you can take that totally with a grain of salt, both in terms of like simplifying probably a very, very complex philosophical opinion, but then also, you know, whatever you want to think about Wikipedia. But Waldorf education is Steiner education. And this guy, Hal Williams, whose house I was in, which found me, and I was cleaning out his basement, is like based upon this understanding. And so this is, and Steiner is amongst esoterics, you know, he's held in the highest regard. And Steiner postulates the existence of an objective, intellectually comprehensible spiritual world. Like he's like, there's this invisible world, and we should be able to really, really understand it and like almost like bring this rational understanding. Like there's a value in rational thought. It's just understanding, like, you know, where the scientific method ends, where the trivium ends and the quadrivium begins. And so it's bringing that to a spiritual world. And it's an accessible human experiences. The followers of anthroposophy aim to develop the mental facilities of spiritual discovery through a mode of thought independent of sensory experience. So what I do know very much about Waldorf education is like everything in Waldorf education is very much about the developing of the soul of the individual, of the child. And it's based upon understanding that upon Steiner's belief. And, you know, I've read a handful of analysis of like Steiner beliefs, you know, each making valid points of like, you know, the dangers associated with it, and the, you know, the higher truths associated with all these different sort of things. And, you know, this is, the reason I bring that up is like there are many, many ways of looking at different things, and I think each person should come up with their own sort of understanding. So I'm not espousing a belief system, but I believe it enough that I sent my children there. So I have this strong connection, and I do know what I'm interested in. And when I read this as a description of Steiner's philosophy, I'm like, that's what I'm working with, and that's what I'm looking with. And I'll also say this, I think this is fantastic. This here's a picture of Rudolf Steiner. This here's a picture of John Rappaport. I'm not saying they're the same person. I'm not saying they're not the same person, but what I will say is if there's ever a example of the signature of doctrines, or the doctrine of signatures, whatever that is known as, that's what we're looking at right here. So let's continue with our story. So the reason I'm bringing up and going deep into the Steiner stuff is because what we're pointing at, what we're looking at, these golden threads, they exist in this, whether you call it the spiritual world, the invisible world, it's in this world. And I, for one, am very interested in understanding that as a very objective, intellectually comprehensible, but also in a very, very free-flowing, artistic sort of way. And the reason I'm saying that is because this is what we're going to need to navigate this reality. I brought up that Freeman's friendship agenda, and I'm seeing that as a model, a working model for the future of like how we're going to be living during this time. And it's going to be a joyful, fun way. And so I'm thinking about that and that used to be like this hippie fantasy, but now it is like, it is the smartest thing we can do. But we need to also approach it, or at least I'm approaching it from like a perspective of it having much more, it's very tangible, or more tangible than I ever gave it credence to before. And I've always, I've always been a little bit out there, I suppose. And I'm seeing this in my personal life, in individuals and my life, which is strongly tied to a Steiner-esque philosophy. Now, I also want to point this out right now, and why this is interesting is because I still have a personal connection with the Waldorf school. As does Jenny. Her daughters go here as well. Her daughters are younger than my sons. And within the school, there's within all schools, and really within all of Waldorf, there is a debate which is happening. And so on the first field level, it's like, is this school like even going to be in existence? Can we have a school? And then secondly, and that could be like financially, that could be like, is the government going to allow it? All these different sort of things. And then secondly is, what is that school going to look like? And what is becoming evident, which I'm seeing within the school which I'm involved with, is that what was once thought of as a group of individuals that would recognize the lacking of let's say mainstream education. And what's nice about this Waldorf school, different than other Waldorf schools, is this one is, I think, more true to its mission in terms of like, the socioeconomic groups this appeals to. But nonetheless, the value, like there used to be a time if you were to go to an education like this, that you would need to sign like, a vow that there will be no television in the home, there'll be no electronic media in the home, because there was this real recognition of, how the electronic world affects the development of the human being. I'll just leave it at that. And there was a time, like, this is an article from 2011, where it was talking about how in Silicon Valley executives would send their children to the Waldorf school in Silicon Valley. It was kind of like a status symbol sort of thing to do, and not to use technology. And it was kind of, this was written in such a time where it was, it was hinted at in these like, quote unquote progressive type of thought that like, technology is not a good thing. And, you want to raise your children without technology. But now what has happened within the Waldorf community itself is that Waldorf has completely lost its connection with that understanding of reality, and it has completely embraced the computer platform and mask wearing between students, and teachers. And so this is something which I found online about, this from an educator in this particular program, saying, "I'm shocked and dismayed by the phenomena of Waldorf teachers teaching via Zoom and other computer platforms." It's like, how far have we fallen? And so what is so interesting, I'm going to circle this back to the Dr. Williams, the very individual who was the inspiration of this type of philosophy, which for me personally has benefited in the shaping of my children. This thing is dead. Whether or not the school dies or not, the philosophy which this was once held, that's no longer there. And I'm finding myself in this man's basement, cleaning it out, breathing his air. One of the ways of payment for this job was I got to take some cool stuff home. And so I've got some of his some of his stuff there. In my personal belonging, because this is an energetic line. The entire work which I was doing related to this work were energetic lines, and I'm seeing it really showing itself now in my personal life. I've been a follower of John Rappaport for a very, very long time. I may not have been a follower of Steiner. I mean, I was probably more than a typical cat down the street, but I was not like a student, but I was a student of Steiner, so whatever that means. So I'm seeing this show up, and I'm saying this is look at your own lives. We're seeing these energetic lines becoming very, very strong and evident in our lives. So where do I want to go with this? So, and the school, yeah, it's, the movement is dying. So let me go end that portion of Dr. Williams right now, because I began looking further into this man, because I realized that I have a connection with this man, and I'm seeing how it's showing itself in this way. So I begin to look and do a search. I'm like, who is this Dr. Williams? And this was really the way this is when it really clicked, to be quite honest. It clicked that he was who he was, that he was the man that Williams Hall was. And I remembered, I did not put the Waldorf connection in my mind. I did not realize that until I saw, when I was going through all of the different wall hangings, that there was a framed certificate which named him as an elder, and it was from the National Center of Homeopathy. And it seems that Dr. Williams, who died peacefully in his home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on 11/2002, he was 87 years old, in the home I was in. And what's funny is I couldn't find an obituary on him anywhere besides this ode to him in homeopathy. But it turns out he was one of the incorporators of the National Center of Homeopathy. And in fact, he was the dean of their summer school, which was held in Millersville, Pennsylvania, 1980 to 1986. So I'm living in Millersville right now. I was in Dr. Williams's own, in his stomping grounds. And so the thing which is so interesting about homeopathy, and I'm not a proponent of homeopathy. If this works with you, work with it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If you want to explore something new, fantastic, What I find so interesting about homeopathy is when you look into it, is it's explained, or one of the ways it's explaining is its ability from a quantum level of going to different dimensions, however you want to go and take that to mean. You know, that's what homeopathy, it works by going on a different level of existence and then bringing back a healing from that level of existence into the realm which we physically reside in, which sounds, you know, very similar to so many different topics. If you can expand your the context in terms of applying that. So now let's go and bring this kind of all home. So when I was in the church, when I was living in the church, I was in see if I even got a picture of this. Do I got a map of this? That's not it. I was right here. This is where the church was, right here. I was in between the timeline and this line of prophecy, 999. And this area right here, this is known as Hamilton Park. That's why this is the timeline, because right here was the headquarters and manufacturing of the Hamilton Watch Company. So what is the Hamilton Watch Company? The Hamilton Watch Company, established in 1892. It was in Lancaster City, okay, or in Lancaster. It was located right in this location, which is now known as the Hamilton Watch Complex. It's named after the founder of Lancaster. Right here we see that where does it even say it? I don't think do I have it right here? The company was named after James Hamilton, the son of a Scottish-born attorney that laid out and founded Lancaster. This guy's a Rosicrucian. I go into this in one. This is all Rosicrucian stuff. This is Hamilton Watch, symbols of time. That's why it's a timeline. This was the largest watch manufacturer in the country at one point. They had 56% of the market at one point. The area which I was in the church was in Hamilton Park, which was where all of the workers of the Hamilton watch factory lived, okay? And so let's now go and switch this up a little bit. And we see in the movie Interstellar is all about multidimensional travel. And the symbol which the movie director, Christopher Nolan, uses to show traveling from the fifth dimension to the third dimension was a Hamilton watch. We see it right here. This is the Matthew McConaughey. He wears a Hamilton khaki whatever watch in the 2014 movie Interstellar. This watch, this physical watch, is the symbol used. I was in the Hamilton Watch Church. I went then into Dr. Williams's basement after being in the spiritual center of the working folks who made the watch company. There's something going on, my friends. It's not just me. I'm just telling the story for you. If you're coming along with me, undoubtedly, you are part of this friendship agenda which is unfolding. And so that's what the next part of this video series is going to be about. And that's where I want to kind of end it with. This is just the preface. Like, you know, I'm going to be talking about what's known as the real internet. I'm going to be talking about that in our next video. Okay? So I appreciate you coming this long, and I hope this has given you a lot of food to thought. A lot of thought for food. You can see how things are starting to turn around. And I want to end this video with one last story. So once the completion of the cleaning out of Dr. Williams's house occurred, Jenny and I then went down to Ocean City, Maryland. We see on this map, this is Ocean City, Maryland. It's You know, if you, it's a ocean town. It's definitely rough around the edges, but it provided a snapshot of where the mainstream mind is showing itself, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. But it was a fascinating time down there. But the most interesting thing I want to point out. I've been a long time studier of chemtrails. I know what they look like. I know how they behave. I've been watching them for a long time. And while in Ocean City, Maryland, I saw something I've never seen before. I saw complete circle chemtrails. I saw them laid, and I saw them expand over a time period. I was at the beach. I got to watch them. Something is changing within either how chemtrails are being expressed. I've only seen them there. And what I'm sensing, this was what makes the most amount of sense. This is Ocean City, Maryland. It is 35 miles away from Wallops Island, which is where we find the Wallops Flight Facility. And this is a major NASA launching area. This is if there's going to be places where there's, you can read this any way you want to, but on the most basic levels this is where the poking through occurs. This is where the bleed through is happening. Potentially. And this is one of the ways it's seeing. And as we are learning to navigate this reality, we are blending between invisible world and visible world. Just recognize that all of the different demarcations are shifting. So with that in mind, this is Mike. I hope this was enjoyable. One last thing for all of those who stayed for the very end. This is my own personal watch. It's the same model of watch which they use in Interstellar. I bought this watch years before I saw Interstellar, but after that movie had been released, that is for certain. So take that however you want to. Until the next one, and the unveiling of the real internet. Keep your eyes open and look for the connections in ways which are normally not thought of to be connected. That's where you find the golden path, in the negative space.